Y'all, thank you for coming. I hope, I'm not going to go through big intros here. I'm hoping that you're all familiar with Diane Lane and Suzanne de Passe and Margo Martindale. Clearly. And how many of you all were here for the last panel? Wow, live to tell, huh?
Wow, okay.
So I think it's quite cruel that those poor fellows, after their long night in the bar last night, had to come in here and do the first panel. And even crueler that we have to follow them. So if you'll give us a minute, we're going to get some shots of tequila up here so we can try to match that panel.
Got some catching up to do.
So women and Westerns, not exactly synonymous. So I'd like to first ask you, Suzanne, as producer of this project, how someone from New York who worked with Berry Gordy in Motown came to champion a Western, which I believe in '89 was already deemed dead, and a miniseries, also deemed dead in '89. What made you decide to do this, and how did the project come to you?
Well, sometimes you don't know what you don't know, but you do know what you love. And I met Larry McMurtry in Tucson. I was there with my ex-husband, and we were at a spa where they served like one lettuce leaf and a, pimento strip or something. And I ran into Gloria Steinem in the women's locker room. And she said, well, Mort, her boyfriend at the time, Mort Zuckerman, we're going off campus tonight for Mexican food. And before she got it out of her mouth, I said, yes. Like real food. And they said they were joining friends, and those friends happened to be Larry McMurtry and Leslie Silko, a friend of his. And I really enjoyed meeting Larry, and he and I hit it off, and we were yakking it up and, gabbing and all of that. And I said to him, next time you're in LA, I'd love to take you to lunch. And he said, okay. And I thought, well, I'd never see him again. And sure enough, he called. And we went to lunch, and I said, I had just been installed as the head of Motown Productions, which was the film and TV arm of Motown Records. And so Motown Industries, as it was called. Anyway, long story short, I said, what do you have kicking around the old trunk that hasn't been produced yet? And he said, well, I have a book coming out in June. This was like March. He said, but you wouldn't like it, it's a Western. And I said, but you're wrong. I love Westerns, which I did. And I was a horsewoman, that he didn't know that, and had grown up in the East, showing horses and riding and teaching and stuff like that. And had moved to LA, where I became I traded my English saddle for a Western saddle. And so he said, well, call my agent, which I did, the famous Swifty Lazar. And the next day, a flatbed dolly rolled into my office because it was Unbound Galleys at the time, and it was in ream boxes of paper, double-spaced, and it looked like, a forest had thrown up on this truck, and just, it was unbelievable. And so I started taking home a box every night. And sure enough, midway through, I said, this is one of the greatest things I've ever read. I called Lazar, even before I'd finished reading the book, and I said, I really would like to have this. And he said, great. And he said, and by the way, I had been doing this job for about 8 minutes. And he said, the option is $50,000. I said, great. Who knew? Because I was used to making records for $100,000, so it sounded all right to me. Well, turns out that, every studio and every network had passed on it, as I was informed by a woman who was working with me, who had come from Warner Brothers. And she said, I don't know how to tell you this, but Swifty just took you, and that's why they call him Swifty. But I think he felt guilty, so he gave me 18 months instead of the usual 12-month option. And so, feeling like the goat, I said, okay. And Larry and I set about a strategy of meeting with directors and we met with Peter Bogdanovich, who took complete credit for the original screenplay, which had been written to reunite John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart and was it Henry Fonda. We met with John Milius. We met with John Huston. And I learned, as each of them was sort of saying how they would approach Lonesome Dove, that this could not be done as a movie, period. And, you know, they would talk about getting rid of fat, then muscle, then bone. And so the structure just fell down on itself. And, you know, because I didn't know what I didn't know, I said, well, let's do a miniseries. Who knew that they were dead? I was coming from the record business. So we were represented at the time by ICM, an agency. And these meetings proved nothing. Larry wrote an outline for a miniseries, and one day we were having a drink, and he said, well, you know, Suzanne, I'm all written out on Lonesome Dove. Bye. I'm on to my next thing. So there I am with now a bestseller, a town that was completely shut down to Westerns and to miniseries and to this particular project, and feeling pretty terrible. And one day, Swifty called me back in early spring, and he said, kid, I want you to know today Larry McMurtry's Lonesome Dove has won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction. And so I went from goat to goddess very quickly, and the world changed. The world changed.
Well, thank you for your persistence.
Yeah.
So, Lori Darling. So you started your career with Laurence Olivier, and then went on to work with people like Richard Gere. By the time you're 23, you're being offered to work on this project. How did this come about for you? What was your decision process to go into, again, a mini-series and a Western?
Well, first of all, I feel very grateful to be a part of Lonesome Dove, period. And certainly it's become the fabric of my life, and I'm kind of amazed that I'm in it. I still kind of feel like, wow, I got that part. You know, it's just, it is iconic. The book is a Pulitzer winner for a reason. And living up to these characters was something that was really, there was so much love and passion that everybody who read the book had for these characters. So I found out yesterday in the car ride to another Lonesome Dove event from Dyson Lovell, our wonderful producer, one of our wonderful producers, and he told me that I didn't have much TV cred. There's a whole quote, what is it, Q?
Q?
Something Q. And I don't know what that word means, because it's probably like a horse brand. I don't know what that is, but it means something. And
It's a popularity quotient.
oh, thank you. Okay, it's like foreign stock. We used to call it that. And apparently, TV is different than movies, and I didn't have a lot of TV knowledgeability or quota or cachet, and it didn't help. It wasn't a perk to get me. It was sort of like they were doing me a favor to bring me to a new audience. And I was like, huh. I'm 50 years old and I'm still learning stuff. This is great. So I still feel lucky in that regard. But the truth is that, you know, there's many parts of Lorena Wood, and I have my stories of creating her, and I have my memories that I treasure, and I could talk for hours about them because they were fun and they're precious, and it's nice that we get to celebrate our happy memories. That's rare. And also the tragedy of her truth that people conveniently forget because it's too painful and sad and scary and horrible. Honestly, I mean, her life was tragic, and she didn't speak much. In the book, she hardly speaks. She's so shut down emotionally. And the preciousness of the relationship that she has with Gus, in the sense that he has access to her trust when she's only available and only useful for one thing in that town, and that her life is so barren, and yet she has a spark in her heart and a flower and a sweetness about her. And there was a lot of contradictions that coexisted, and she's a complex character. I love her. She's precious to me.
So did you seek Diane out when you were deciding on casting that role, or did your agents bring it to you?
Yeah,
Diane?
how did I get
Well, we'd have to ask Dyson because he really was the guiding force in our casting. I mean, we all contributed, but Dyson had come out of a very successful career as not only casting director but a producer for Murder on the Orient Express and all of these wonderful films. And he had such a great knowledge. Plus, we had Lynn Kressel, who was helping us. So it's hard to remember exactly how now that I know Simon has a list of people that we auditioned, that some of the biggest names in the world that we did not give the parts to, well, who become the biggest names in the world. But, you know, it's almost like trying to unring a bell when it did happen. And you kind of, the memory of how it happened evaporates because you're into that reality of it's Diane Lane, you know, and that's Lorena Wood, and forever it shall be so. And I don't know who those other women were, you know, I don't care.
Yay! See, I still feel lucky. It's true.
So Margo, I'm not going to call you by your name, which I'm sure you didn't even know what that was when you got cast. Did you? So you're back. I think this was when I was Googling you, that this was either your first film role or one of your first film roles. Can you talk about a little bit of your background after you left Jacksonville, Texas, for New York?
After I left Jacksonville, I went north. And I went to University of Michigan, and then I found myself in New York City, and I was a theater actress, and I struggled and did play after play after play. And then finally this little play came along that I thought, maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't, and it was called Steel Magnolias, and it was that time when I was invited by Lynn Kressel, because I had a little visibility, to come and audition for Buffalo Heifer. and I was pregnant, and I didn't tell anybody. And then I finally said to my agent, I think you should call them and tell them that I'm pregnant, so they're not going to want me to do this. So I got word back that said, even better.
Wow.
So, yeah. I'm so thrilled, being a Texan, to be part. It made me cry. It's so true. To be part of this. Little part, but part of it, yeah.
So had either of you, Margo and Diane, read the book before you actually were involved in the project, or was it something you...
I've read the book, yeah, and I was a huge McMurtry fan, yeah.
I hadn't. I read it, I think, and it was the most delicious experience. I wish because you can only have your first time with a book once, and I wish I could have read it slower and let it linger, because it was so fabulous. But I devoured it, and it was, as they say, a no-brainer. Just to live up to the writing would be. I could see why it was called forth into being, had to be brought to the screen.
So normally I'd ask the two actresses how you prepared for the parts, but this is a pretty clean-cut audience, I'm assuming, so we're going to skip that. And move on to the process of actually working on a 6-hour miniseries and what that was like being on the set with so few women and so many men. I mean, there were Glenn Headley and Angelica Houston, who unfortunately aren't here, but they too were some of the other primary roles, female roles on this, but not a lot of women on the set, and a few crew, but not a lot. What was it like?
Well, Glenn is amazing in this film. She tears your heart out and stomps on what's left of it. She's amazing, and you kind of can't fathom what her character's thinking. So delicious a part to play, I would imagine. And of course, Angelica is very sad that she can't be here. Her heart is here, and she's with us in spirit because she couldn't, because of work obligations, attend. But you know, there's so much love for her character, and she knows that, and she holds that very dear to her. So she's here in spirit. But I forgot the question.
So
I just wanted to talk about them.
So you're out.
Let's talk about the people who are not in the room and blame them.
How long was the shoot? Like how much time were you on set? How much were you in the? I mean, I'm assuming you were in the. I mean, pretty remote places you shot, and how was that?
I didn't get to the snowy part.
I didn't. I kind of let them go on down to Del Rio. But I also had my day job that I was doing at the same time. So, but I do remember being in Austin at the very beginning. And speaking of you know, letting go, it was really hard to turn it over to those guys. I remember walking across the, you know, because I think we were at the Radisson Hotel. I don't remember, but there was a hotel part, and then there was an office building, and then there was sort of this walk in the same lobby, across a long lobby. And I remember very vividly because I was the only, you know, girl in the sort of hierarchy of the production. And I remember that I had to come to grips with the fact that these people who had joined me on this journey knew a lot more about what needed to happen right then than I did. And I had to let it go. And it was really hard. And I'm so glad I did, because to fight it would have been disaster. And to insinuate myself into some of the process would have been stupid. And so there was something inside of me that knew to let go. And in letting go, I became much more a part of it than I think I would have as we began production. Because in pre-production, it's all good and stuff like that. But when it gets down to the rubber meets the road, and we're in those last days of pre-production, getting ready to go on set and do this. And this was the first epic anything I had ever been involved in. I was a screenwriter for Lady Sings the Blues, and I was lucky enough to be nominated for an Academy Award, but for producing something of this size, it took a village. But it took a village of men to really let me know that they needed me badly. Because at the end of the day, there were things about Lonesome Dove that I think only a female perspective joining with what was already there. But in editing, I remember I had gone out to lunch and I came back and they had cut those pigs following the wagon out of Lonesome Dove. And I almost had a heart attack and fought and fought and fought. And what?
I remember the
Yeah,
story.
right.
Yeah.
And those pigs went back in. I went to lunch another day, and Clara begging Gus to take the land just a few days' ride away was out. And I almost had a heart attack and went back in. And so I think that there were things that I remember, that just moments that, because the romance of Lonesome Dove is what's so special. It's not just the guys and it's not just the girls, but it's the romance of the West, and it's the romance of the characters and their relationships. And those little moments contributed to the bigger moments. And so for me, well, there was really something annoying. Simon Windsor used to call everybody, "Hey, mate." all of the producers, all of the crew, everybody, you know, and there was Dougie Milsom, and there was, you know, Dyson, and an executive that worked for me, Michael Weisbarth. He was a mate. And I finally said at lunch one day in one of the tents, I said, do you guys have an equivalent for a woman? And he looked at me like I had just, you know, fallen out of a tree. And he said, no. And then he thought about it some more, and he said, well, maybe a Sheila. I went, that doesn't sound as good as mate. I don't want to be called, hey, Sheila, I've got a name. You know, it's like, so there was that sort of chauvinistic thing, but it was also wonderful because it is fun to be the rose among the thorns.
So you mentioned heart, and I want us to see a couple of clips here. I'd actually like to show the first one and then the second one right after, and it's the Adobe, the first one being Gus dancing clip, and then the Adobe Walls clip. Could we do that?
Lori, listen to me now, pretty little thing. You see, life in San Francisco is still just life. Now, if you want only one thing too much, it's likely to turn out a disappointment. Now, the only healthy way to live, as I see it, is to learn to like all the little everyday things.
Yeah, like what?
Like a sip of good whiskey of an evening, or a soft bed, or a glass of buttermilk, or say, a feisty gentleman like myself. Now you close your pretty little eyes. Go on. Don't open till I count to 23. Okay? Now no cheating. Your cheating days is over, woman. 1, 2, 3.
What are you doing?
4. Don't open your eyes. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 20. We better make it 27, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Don't open them. 26 and 27. Come on, woman. I hope you can swim. I can't swim. I can float for about 30 seconds. Oh, hello. Oh, no. Oh, hold your damn nose. Oh, hello. It ain't very deep, is it?
Hey, gents, welcome. That's us. Here we are.
Who's gonna knock?
Not me.
I ain't gonna knock.
Well, you know, maybe we ought to have us another beer or two first. Jordan Ellen? Howdy, ma'am.
What is it, Bob?
Troop of young fellers, best I can see.
Well, they just let you out of school?
Well, what can we do for you boys? Want to ride the bucking pony, do you? Is that it? Well, yes, ma'am. I reckon we do.
Well, can you pay? 'Cause this pony don't buck for free.
Was this enough? Woo! Why, Mary, looks like we got us a bunch of rich cattlemen here after all.
Well, you boys, now you come on in, and I'm gonna take you, honey.
Maybe you will, maybe you won't. And I seen him first, so I ought to have dibs.
We'll have at 'em then. These two here will suit me just fine. Come on, boys.
Hey, Jimmy, where you going?
Not me. I ain't going in there.
Come on, cowboy. Skin them pants off. We ain't got all day for you little tadpoles.
So sorry about that. There's another clip we'll see in a few minutes, but that's a little more akin to the first one with Gus and Lori Darling. And so well, I guess the first big question is for you, Margo. How did that set you up ultimately to win 2 Emmys for Justified and The Americans?
Just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And, you know, when you're in something that great, people look at you a little bit differently, even if it's Buffalo Heifer.
Yeah, but it's so amazing that one scene can just establish the real talent and the character that you brought to that. I mean, I can't, again, nobody else could have done it the way you did it. It was perfect.
You know, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So Diane, how much? I mean, you and Duvall had such incredible chemistry. And had you ever worked together before? And then how much time did you actually have to prepare together? Did you do a lot of rehearsing to be able to have that chemistry on screen, or was it just natural?
So funny that you say that, and thank you, because it was nice to feel part of the chemistry that he created, because honestly, he cast a spell as Gus. He was basically in character the whole time, which I didn't realize until we went to promote the film when it was coming out. I call it a film. We filmed it. It's a film. But anyway, and I felt like I met Bobby for the first time. I'm like, who are you, and what have you done with Gus? Where is he? I know he's here somewhere. I don't know what that is. And he's an actor who works that way, and I love that about him. Everybody has their process. And I know he had great love for Gus. I've heard him say that it was his favorite character ever played. And I can understand that, and it certainly comes through the film that way, through the screen. I feel such love for this man, and he's got such a joy of living, and he does have great words of wisdom, and I think every man needs a Lorena to feel smart and be benefiting a woman in that way, the kind of largesse d'esprit that he has. Some of the sage words that he gets to say to her and encourage her. I think that's the definition of love, is to give encouragement. And he provided that to her. And even after he was no longer around physically, his spirit lived on through the gifts that he'd given spiritually to those whose lives he touched. So it's a legendary character, and she loved him, and I loved Bobby. I guess that was Gus. I don't know where Bobby ends and then Gus begins, to tell you the truth, and we like it that way. He comes up and he says, "Lori, darling," and I'm like, "You got it." I mean, only for you, you know. But it's true, and just it's a lingering kind of affection that came from the love of these characters when we read the book. So.
Well, let's show that Adobe Wall scene, because this really is, to me, the definition of love, this scene. It's beautiful.
Look what I found here. Gold coin. There's 5s and 10s. There's even a handful of $50 gold pieces. That's good luck. Now we can play ourselves some high-stakes poker. Huh? Now all that on your side is yours. And all this over here is mine, see? Go. cards in your hand, darling. Don't you see them? You ever had a play, do you, Lori? Your bet. But be careful, because I'm mighty tricky. Remember? Tricky old Gus. That's the idea, but we hadn't bet yet. So we'll try it again.
They shouldn't have took me, Gus.
I know, honey, but they did. They should, but they did. They did. Now, you just go on and cry it out. See, you got a long time to live, and you don't want this thing dragging you backwards, see? So you just cry it on out to old Gus. You'll be all right, Jerry, right here. You're safe now.
Hard not to cry when I see that. It's hard not to cry again.
Oh, we need you to cry, because then all three of you.
I know. I'm holding back. I just can't. If I start, I might not stop.
But while you were working on that, I mean, were these hard places to get to emotionally? I mean, how did you prepare for that?
Yes, is a complete sentence. You feel this heightened, the stakes are very high, the emotional stakes. And we didn't have a lot of time. What do we have, 11 pages a day?
Yeah. Some days were 11 pages.
Yeah, so get it right and get it on down the road. I mean, it sounds harsh, but the truth is that we didn't have the luxury of being able to sneak up on this stuff. That was today, and then you have something else to film that day, and you go, really? Can't I just go home now? Isn't that enough? But no, we got to do the other scene. So that's life in showbiz. But the truth of the matter is that it's a very sacred experience, and it's lovely to have the opportunity to touch that and feel that, and be part of that, and offer that. That's the best thing that I get to do in my craft, and to have moments like that to live up to, then all the more for everybody, because heartbreak is also heartbreak open. We go into the dark and we gather together to tell stories around the fire. That's how we still work, our brains. And we have the flicker of these images, and we tell the stories, and we feel each other's pain, and we get healed from it. And that is, you have to feel the pain to heal it. So that's my offering. I didn't realize it at the time. I wasn't very circumspect. I was panicked about getting it right. But now I can experience it and see it for what it is and be so grateful I got to do it.
I think we also need to recognize how beautifully that was shot by Simon, but also Doug Milsom's work on that scene is just, well, on every scene, but I mean,
but even
the
the
lighting,
framing,
the whole,
just the fire here and the water there and the feng shui,
right,
of it all.
right.
I mean, everything, it was all this
the
great.
set design, Carrie White. I mean, we look at it now, and I really understand, having done a lot more stuff, just how perfect and perfectly talented everybody was on that shoot. Bill Wittliff, who adapted the book in such a brilliant way.
I can't thank him enough for what he did.
What was really interesting is none of the act breaks when we got to editing were where we had planned them in the script. I don't know if you remember that, but you had written each 2-hour episode, but when we finally were doing it at the end, all of the night breaks happened in a different place. except for the end, obviously, because it was the end. But it was because we learned and we saw, once it was in the can and we were looking at it, that there were better places emotionally to end.
So the tables have turned a bit since 1989 about the difference between film and television. Now, of course, television is where everyone wants to be. In '89, there was a distinct difference. People who were in film were in film. People who were in television were in television. So for the two of you, Margo, and you were already doing some TV, right, through Motown, but Margo and Diane, you two really weren't doing, as you pointed out, you had no cred. So what did this do for your shift at that time, or did it do anything? Was it TV something that you wanted to continue to pursue after you made this?
Well, I always wanted to be in TV, and I just happened to continue to get movies after Lonesome Dove. You know, one little thing here, sometimes a little bigger here, but I always wanted my own show. And I finally got it, and it was a disappointment.
So now you have 5 instead, right?
So no, I absolutely love television. It's the same. It's all the same. But now you get to do 10 episodes of something, and it's a whole movie. So you're just doing it slower, probably, than Lonesome Dove. You know, yeah. I don't see the difference.
So
Is there a difference?
Now?
Well, all movies wind up on TV, so I mean, it depends on when you see them.
And I think movies are not being. I think it's hard to get a movie made these days.
You think?
Yeah.
Well, everybody today is their own network. You know, we have many screens to choose from, and we have on demand, and we have all kinds of choices. I find for myself, by the time I figure out what I want to watch, the time I had to watch it is gone because there's so many choices. But, you know, whether you're watching, today television isn't that thing in your living room or your bedroom with the big screen. It's any screen. It's your computer, it's your laptop, it's your mobile device, it's your tablet. And so the screen has become just whichever one you happen to be looking at. And so we make the distinction that a movie is where you go and you pay money and you go inside a dark room. And the rest of it is television.
Interesting.
So Margo, what's it like having an animated character named after? Is anybody familiar with some of Margo's current work? In addition to Justified and The Americans?
It's absurd. I do this cartoon called BoJack Horseman, and I was doing a comedy on CBS, The Millers, and Will Arnett was playing my son, and he said, "You're going to have to come do my cartoon." I said, "I'm not going to do a cartoon." He said, "No, you're going to come do this cartoon." I said, "No, Will, I'm not going to go do it." He said, the part's name is Margo Martindale, character actress. So I play Margo Martindale, character actress. It's very good too, isn't it good?
If you haven't watched that show, find whatever device you can find it on and do it. It's great.
It's really great, yeah.
So horses were an integral part of this, and I know, I hear, Margo, you were a barrel racer.
In my dreams.
But did you all have a lot of experience with horses prior to this, or was this an education once you got onto the set?
I had the pleasure of participating in a Western at a very young age, or even younger. I was 14, and it was my second film, and it was directed by Lamont Johnson, and we filmed it. I'm going to brag on it a little because it was with Burt Lancaster and Rod Steiger, and I think it was Scott Glenn's first role where he started out in stunts, you know. So anyway, it was just an illustrious cast, and it was great to be part of it. And I could not wait to get on those horses. I grew up loving horses. Any excuse I had, I'd go out to Queens. I grew up in New York City, where there was some space out of Manhattan and ride. I'd ride underground in a circle when I was 4 years old. Any way I could get on a horse, it made me happy. So I actually got lost at lunch in Mexico on the John Wayne Ranch because I convinced them to let me ride the horse. And at high noon, there's no shadows. You don't know. You just go over a ridge, and you don't know which ridge you've gone over. It was such a classic bad mistake to make. So I learned that at 14, and anyway, I was thrilled to get on a horse again. Doing it in petticoats and in corsets is cruel and unusual punishment, because you can get hooked and stuck and caught and trip and look foolish 8 ways to Sunday. And then also the corset, I'm sorry, you know, you're not supposed to ride a horse like that. You're supposed to go with it a little bit, and it's not easy to do or look elegant doing it or not hurt yourself.
You did a pretty good job, though.
Yeah.
Did you? I mean, were you?
Well, I certainly didn't ride a horse.
Wow. Some might argue that.
So how did barrel racing prepare you for that?
Very funny. I did grow up on horses, yeah.
The fun part of being a producer on a Western is that after the first shot is off and you know what the work is for the day, and you're friends with the wranglers, then what I got to do was go riding, and I would be in New Mexico and out just riding, and Dyson would come with me sometimes, and I would think about my office and the people working there, and I would just laugh my ass off. That this is what I was doing, and that was what they were doing, and you know, it's magic. So that's why I did, you know, like 58 more hours of Westerns after that, because it's big fun. Yeah, right. It's just a good excuse.
So how long did you shoot, and how much part of it? I mean, you were there most of the time, I'm assuming, Suzanne.
No, actually, I was there in the beginning. The shoot was, I think, 16 weeks. Was it 16 weeks? Yeah, it's about 16 weeks. And so we started in Austin, and I stayed for Austin, and then they went to Del Rio, and then I caught up with them after Angel Fire and spent the last 8 weeks in Santa Fe.
And Margo, you were just in Santa Fe, right? Yeah.
Just in Santa Fe, yeah. And I remember, you know, of course, I was there one day, but I remember that the guys were so happy to see girls, even Buffalo Heifer, but because they had been down in Del Rio. Yeah.
But there was a lot of fun too. Barry Tubb taught me to two-step, which was really, thank you, Barry, wherever you may be. And you know, we had some parties and things that were memorable. Cannot be repeated, but they were memorable. No, but I think what was interesting to me last night, we all ended up at the bar at the hotel, and it was like 27 years had not gone by in terms of just the, you know, because when you have that kind of shared adventure with people, it's indelible, and it stays with you. And you know, just sitting around and just everybody feeling so comfortable and so relaxed and so glad to be there.
And we were looking at the at the cattle
Yeah.
crossing and all
Right.
that. And we
Well, no, we have to.
when you
the
lived
backstory is
through it,
that we got a gun and told the bartender to put Lonesome Dove up on the screen.
And I was like, we felt so exhausted and accomplished looking at all of that.
It was like, yeah.
We lived to tell.
So you know, it was like we had all shared the same summer vacation and wanted to show the pictures. Other people in the bar weren't exactly, you know. But I think there was nobody but us in the bar at the end, you know. And they said, we went, the first group that got there, we said, well, what time do you close? They said 11:30, and I looked up and it was 1:45, and we were still going strong, so it was not really true that they closed at 11:30. They closed when they stopped making money.
So Diane, how long were you actually on set? And
I honestly am not entirely sure. It's been a while. I mean, I got a nice, diverse experience involving all that time with Blue Duck. You know, there was one time, I mean, there's so many stories. Honestly, I could go on, but I remember when he allowed me to drink water. And there was a body of water, but it was really kind of farm runoff. And I was like, okay, I got one dress. And this dress has to get me through this whole film. I loved this dress. It was like, you know, a superhero costume or something for me, because Lorena had gone through so much. And I had to get down into that water and act all eager to drink it. And I said, I got an idea. Can we get a bucket of some other water that I actually can drink? So we put that out of frame to ruin some magic there. But, you know, because I wanted to drink it. But this was not okay. This water was not okay. In fact, I got ringworm. I did. TMI. Oh, yeah. At one point, I had a scorpion in my petticoats. That was a dance I did. That was the can, I think, out there on the bushes. Yeah, it's crazy time. I mean, it was fun, memorable. But you do feel, you know, you go out into nature to film these films. And I love that about Westerns. And I honestly don't know if we could film it today because the sky is so full of scars from airplanes or whatever's going on. It's so interesting to me. I look around and there's so much noise pollution and sky pollution. And this is it's so recent history, but it's already a more precious time. We have our commodity of earth and air and water, so.
did they at least have separate facilities for girls and boys?
Separate bushes. I mean, the great thing is, you're in that skirt, nobody knows what's going on under there. So I could have hidden some extra cast members and brought them to have some craft service all over there. The bees would love the food. We'd have to keep moving it around and cover it up and protect everything from everything else. Yeah, it was out there in the wild, you know, keeping the food away from the critters. It was a time.
But that must have been a commitment for your career at that time to be on a TV in a 6-hour shoot, so 16 weeks if you were on it for...
A 6-day shoot?
Yeah.
I don't do those anymore. I have an agent now who understands a 5-day, I mean, you know, there's a big difference.
Weeks is just
People don't understand it gets later and later, and so what winds up happening is you go to work at 5 in the morning on a Monday, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and the days are long, so they can only bring you back after you've had a union amount of sleep. And 12 hours sometimes, maybe not always, 10 hours, and you do those in a row, and then suddenly by the end of the week you're filming nights because you're drifting into that time of day to be working. And by Friday and Saturday, we would be wrapping at dawn and coming back to work after our day off at dawn on Monday. So you're completely spun around. It's like you've been to Tasmania and you come to work and you're like, whoa, is this breakfast, lunch, or dinner? What are we doing? But that's the nature of it. So it was trying, but it was a grind. We were working so hard, but with an equal amount of love and passion. And I don't know that you get that kind of love and passion from people anymore. When I got off the plane to start the character, the Teamsters who met me at the airport to drive me out, they were like, "You're going to have that scar, aren't you? They're going to put it on the correct side of your face, right? It's going to be on her little lip there." And I was like, "Whoa, you're all up in my business." Because they loved this book, and they didn't want it messed up in any way by anybody. I was like, I hear you. Thank you for being the messenger of that message. Yeah.
Well, that's a good segue, though, to that, because this was already a beloved book at the point where you all were working on it, and you're bringing these characters to life. And what kind of pressure was that for you?
Well, I mean, I think that without Bill Wittliff and the not only understanding what to keep, how to keep it, what to lose, and what to introduce to capture the essence and the spirit, although it wasn't necessarily right that way in the book. That's you, babe. You did that. And I think that because of that, and I always refer to it as the giant magnet, it attracted everybody, what he did. And I'm obviously started with Larry, but the ability to then see it come up off the page onto the stage, onto the film, into the home. And the thing that I find the most, I think we all get the greatest joy from, is that people who love the book also love the miniseries. And that's the biggest compliment, is that we didn't mess it up.
So how did that, I mean, coming off of, you're shooting it, you're just trying to get through the days, you're not probably very aware of the impact it's ultimately going to have when it hits the screen. How did things change for you afterwards? Even with Buffalo, let's start with Buffalo Heifer, actually.
I was seen for a lot more things, and I was, and most every director that the movies I did were all big star directors, and Sidney Lumet and Sidney Pollack and Robert Benton and all great directors, and they're all fans of Lonesome Dove, and I think that's how that helped me. Yeah.
You go.
Okay, I'll go. No. Well, it just changed my life. It was a man bites dog story in a way, because suddenly people were trying to figure out, just your opening question, how did you come to do this, Miss de Passe? And I would do these interviews, and I'd be very accommodating. Well, I've loved the West and blah, blah, blah. And I realized that the subtext was, what is a black woman from Harlem doing a Western and doing it so well? How did that happen? It doesn't compute, And I'm like, why don't you ask Marcy Carsey and Tom Werner what they're doing with Bill Cosby, and then come back and ask me that, because they were producing his show, and I felt that it was, sort of an astonishment to people. But on the other hand, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because even though the company that we did it with went bankrupt and we didn't get paid and it was a horror show, what I learned was there's so much more to value than dollars. So for me, it was like the heavens opened, and the credibility was abundant, and the interest was real, and it encouraged me so much to follow my gut. It really validated that, 100,000 people cannot like something, but if you like it, you believe in it, you stay with it till it gets done. So that's what it did for me.
Diane?
Well, I mean, I have this abiding fan experience with the piece. And then I remember I'm in it also, and I just kind of get tickled all over again in that way. I mean, because it is iconic, it was iconic, it will always be iconic. There's a reason for that word. I can't imagine, Bill, the pressure that you might have felt just saying, oh yeah, and it won a Pulitzer, and so I'm just gonna bring it to the screen. Because there's all of that too, not just the love, but then that accolade gives it a special something or other. So, you're so perfect hand in glove for this, and it is to your credit that we're all here, because that's no small dance move to get a book to the screen. How rare does that happen? I mean, honestly, I've loved some books, and they've come to the screen, and I kind of cringe when I go in there, because I just know I'm going to feel disappointed or violated or neglected, or, you know, they just didn't get it, or the editor or the music, or there was something about it. So to live up to it successfully is just the biggest feather in my cap that I ever got to experience what that kind of success feels like. It's lovely. And maybe we'll get another chance to do something as great in our lives. I don't know, but it's worth remembering and coming back for, so I'm glad everybody's here.
So how many marriage offers did you get?
That's sweet. I don't recall that. Well, it's funny. I got married that year. Yeah, I got married pretty quick.
I feel
in
like
Santa Fe, and I moved to Santa Fe. Everybody fell in love with the whole experience, you know.
I feel like I didn't know a man who wasn't in love with your character in that film. So
She's
I don't know
great.
if your wives are here, but who are the men in love with Lori Darling in this room? Oh, come on, folks. Be honest.
I'm at auction here. That's what I feel like. Hey, Lori, she's precious. Yeah.
So I understand we are out of time here. So so I want to thank you all for doing this, coming all this way. Yeah.
Well, we'll stand for you, too.